Hello there, my name is Sarah Groth, and this is my video assignment. So before jumping into my lesson, I would like to give a little bit of background on the book that I chose to pair with my lesson. And the book is Countdown. It's a novel by Deborah Wiles. And I thought this would be a great book for an upper L classroom. I was thinking maybe around 7th grade. And in case you are unfamiliar with the book, I'm going to read the inside front cover just to give you a short little description of what the book's about. A time that changed the world. A time that changed Franny's life. Franny Chapman just wants some peace, but that's hard to get when her best friend is feuding with her. Her sister has disappeared, and her uncle is fighting an old war in his head. Her saintly younger brother is no help, and the cute boy across the street only complicates things. Worst of all, everyone is walking around just waiting for a bomb to fall. It's 1962, and it seems that the whole country is living in fear. When President Kennedy goes on television to say that Russia is sending nuclear missiles to Cuba, it only gets worse. Franny doesn't know how to deal with what's going on in the world, no more than she knows how to deal with what's going on with her family and friends, but somehow she's got to make it through. Featuring a captivating story interspersed with footage from 1962, award-winning author Deborah Wiles has created a documentary novel that will put you right alongside Franny as she navigates a dangerous time in both her history and our history. It is an experience you will never forget. So I was thinking this book would be great for a history lesson, specifically one going over the Cuban Missile Crisis, because the novel is very interesting, following the perspective of a fifth grader who lived at the time of all of it was going on. So the nonfiction piece of literature that I would like to pair with the reading of Countdown would be having the students read President Kennedy's speech that he gave when he addressed the U.S. regarding the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it would make a really good tie because in the book, the main character, Franny, sits down with her family and watches the speech on television, and she kind of gives a play-by-play of the speech, how her and her family are reacting, and her thoughts and feelings. So I thought that would be a really good tie-in for the students to read that. So I'm going to start teaching the lesson that I would use this for by reading a bit of the text and then explaining 2 of the activities that I would be having the students do along with this text for the lesson. Okay, everyone, I would like to start off today going over the book Countdown. All of you should have finished reading the book by today. So if you could pull that out for me and turn to page 197, I would like to discuss the part in the book where Franny sits down with her family to watch the speech that President Kennedy gives. So I am going to read aloud a passage. I want all of you to read along with me. And as I'm reading this, I want you to think about how Franny feels in the situation while this is going on, and maybe try to put yourself in that position if something like this were to happen now in your life, if you were to sit with your family and hear a speech like this on television. So page 197, and we're going to start at the top. We are glued to the television as a family at 7 o'clock. Mom and Dad sit on the couch. Uncle Lots is in his chair. Drew and I are with Jack on the floor in our pajamas and slippers, in the same positions we take when we watch Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, only there is no Tinkerbell, no Walt Disney, no thrilling opening music. But there is President Kennedy, and he is so handsome, almost as handsome as Daddy. He's sitting behind his desk, and he looks very serious. He doesn't smile or show his teeth. John and Caroline aren't there with him, and neither is Jackie, Mrs. Kennedy, the First Lady, who Mom says is class personified. It's just President Kennedy, the American flag, and us. Good evening, my fellow citizens. Mom whispers, look at the dark circles under his eyes. He hasn't slept for days, snaps Uncle Otts. Shh, says Daddy. Drew clutches his book while President Kennedy tells us shocking news. The Russians have been secretly shipping atomic missiles to Cuba, and we, the American people, need to know about it. Each of these missiles, in short, is capable of striking Washington, D.C. As if on cue, thunder claps outside our window, and we all jump. Even Jack whimpers. In addition, jet bombers capable of carrying nuclear weapons are now being uncrated and assembled in Cuba. Russian jets and Russian missiles in Cuba, with Russian bombs aimed at us right at Washington, D.C.? Uncle Otz was right. I call upon Chairman Khrushchev to halt and eliminate this clandestine, reckless, and provocative threat to world peace. In fact, the bombs can reach the whole world, says President Kennedy. He wants Chairman Khrushchev to stop trying to take over the world. We are the United States, and we will not surrender. We're going to make blockades in the sea, and we will fight back if anyone in the world is attacked. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission. Joe Ellen was wrong. The Russians are coming to get us. They're practically next door. My slippered feet are like ice, and my mouth is as dry as a cotton ball. I don't even have any spit to swallow. I look at Drew, but he won't look at me. There are no commercials after President Kennedy's speech, just Walter Cronkite to tell us what we already heard. We might be at war with the Russians any minute. Any minute those bombs might come roaring our way. We need to be prepared. We need to stay safe. And that's the way it is, Monday, October 22nd, 1962. Okay, everyone, now that your minds are refreshed on that part of the book, I am now going to pass out to all of you a sheet of paper that has President Kennedy's speech on it that he gave that night, his actual speech. And I'm going to give you all about 10 minutes to just read through it and see how much of it you get. Maybe underline some parts you're not sure about or make little comments. It's kind of a hefty speech, but I know you guys can get through it. And after you read that, we're going to do our first activity. So now that you read through President Kennedy's speech, I am going to do this activity with you. I'm going to pass out a piece of paper, and it's going to have a bunch of questions on it, almost as if you were answering an interview. And I want you to answer the questions as if you were experiencing the situation that Franny was in. Now that you read the speech that Kennedy gave, what were your immediate thoughts on what he had to say? Or what are some of your fears for your country that you have? So I'm going to pass these out, and I want you to answer all of them in the first person saying, I feel blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to give you all time to do this, and try and answer them as honestly and detailed as possible. Obviously, you can't completely understand because you're not in the situation. I want you to kind of play pretend and just make up a scenario if you were in your house when you watched it, or if you talked to your parents about it after, if your parents were comfortable having you watch the TV show, or if they didn't want you to watch it. Just kind of hypothetically think, if this really were to happen today, how would you feel? And write those answers on the sheet that I pass out. Okay, now everyone, I want you to hold on to those sheets of paper. We're going to do the next activity, which also goes along with the book Countdown and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to share your thoughts on those interview questions if you want to once we get back. But the next activity we're going to do is going to be in the computer lab. So I want you to pack up, bring just a notebook and a pencil. And we're going to go to the computer lab, and once we get there, I'll explain the rest of the directions. Okay, now that everyone is at a computer, what I'm going to ask you to do is to look up some music from the time period that the book was written in. As you can tell, even just from the cover of the book, having it be an old record, music has a big impact in this book. Franny's sister has her record player that she lets Franny play on occasion, only certain records, and Franny always talks about her favorite ones and singing along. But some of those songs were written about what was going on at the time. They were written about the country being in panic or people coming together and making peace. So, what I want everyone to do, if you brought your book with you, that is great. You can look up some of the specific songs that Franny does mention in here. Or, if you did not bring your book with you, you can just look up songs that came out in 1962. I want you to look up the lyrics and put your headphones on and also listen to the songs as you're following along. I'm going to walk around and make sure everyone's staying on task. But I want you to make a list, try and come up with 3 or 4 songs that you can find that can relate to how the people were feeling when all of this was going on. Find old songs that are out at the time frame. So look for songs that were playing in the 1960s. And just make a list of whatever songs you find. And when we get back to the classroom, we will talk as a class and see what you guys come up with. So now that we are back in the classroom, I wanted to give everyone a chance to share what they found in the lab. So, or like I said, if you wanted to share your opinions on the interview questions that you answered before the lab, I would like everyone to participate in this activity. So you can either discuss a song that you found and share some lyrics that are applicable to how people were feeling during the time period, or you can share one of your responses to the writing assignment that you did beforehand. So I am going to go around the class and everyone can just give a little bit of information on what they learned today. Wow, it sounds like everybody really found a lot of information and had a lot to say about the text. I think that you all have a very good understanding about how the people felt during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think that after reading President Kennedy's speech, it appears that all of you really had a better understanding, and not only could you understand how Franny felt, but you guys could analyze the situation yourselves and also put yourself in that situation. So, good job, everybody.